How's it going, y'all? David Vignair and Brad Scott here. This is the Overruled podcast brought to you by Scott Vignair. We're going to jump right back into our hot topics to start today. Brad and I each have a hot topic, and mine is related to the election recall of the current New Orleans mayor, LaToya Cantrell. The particular issue I want to talk about, Brad, is the legality of the Secretary of State deal that he cut in the recalls litigation filed in front of Judge Jennifer Medley here in Orleans Civil District Court related to the number of signatures that are needed to trigger the recall election. So
this was basically just to get the calculation, how many they need in order to get everything moving, correct?
That's right. Just a quick primer. So what the election law says, at the time a recall is filed, you have to get 20% of the active voters on the registration list with the local parish registrar's office to sign in the very arcane process of the recall signature process to trigger the recall election.
And apparently they haven't cleaned up that list in a while, it sounds like.
Very unclean. So the recall campaign hires a private company who canvasses the Orleans Parish Register's rolls and finds tens of thousands of voters who either were dead, had never lived in Orleans Parish for 30 some odd years, had moved into a different parish, many of whom who moved out the state. In fact, Fox 8 had some examples, and they kept these particular voters anonymous. But for example, Miss Emily, she would be 116 years old right now. She was listed as an active voter, even though her obituary shows that she died in March of 2006, so nearly 19 years ago. Another, Kim, she's an active voter in Orleans Parish at the time the recall's filed, but exhibits in the litigation showed that the last time she voted in Orleans Parish was 1985, the year I was born, 37 years ago. And that record shows she moved to San Francisco in 1997, but she's still listed as an active voter here.
Makes you really question what's the process in the city for cleaning up these voter rolls and whether they even do it.
And whether or not the state as a whole is forcing each local register in every parish to actually canvass annually and clean up those rolls. So the local register here gets dismissed from the lawsuit, and then the recall campaign enters into a settlement agreement, a consent judgment, with the Secretary of State's office, where the Secretary of State consents that at least 25,000 active voters on the day the recall was filed were not active voters for purposes of state law triggering the recall, which would have lowered the recall campaign's mandated signature goal from 49 some odd thousand down to 44 some odd thousand, a difference of 5,000 signatures needed, approximately 10% of the 49,976,000 that was previously required. Critical issue because at some point in time before the signatures were submitted before Mardi Gras, the recall was publicly saying at least that they were about 1,000 short of that 49,000 they needed. And as most observers have noted, you can anticipate that at least 10% of those signatures will get knocked out as not qualified recall signatures, not following the proper procedure. And so those 5,000 votes could turn to be critical.
It'd make a big difference.
At the time of March 22nd, when the register goes to the governor and certifies whether or not the goal has been reached, which big picture tells us, what is LaToya Cantrell's legal strategy here? Why has she not, for those of you who would not know, people who are interested parties under the intervention article can intervene in cases that they have not been named. She could have intervened in this litigation and had lawyers brief and fight against this consent judgment and argue that it was illegal to stop this train from moving forward. And so as you and I were discussing before the show, is her strategy here, I mean, you're a big procedure guy, big picture thinker on this type of thing. Is the strategy here from your vantage point, wait, let them do all this, and then at some point in time, her legal team files an injunction and tries to enjoin her from getting on the ballot if the recall is ultimately successful? What are your thoughts?
Well, I think you're first assuming that there's logic at play here in the strategy. So, you don't know. You don't know what's going on behind the scenes, what they're thinking. But it seems like an odd thing to let the Secretary of State just enter into this agreement, effectively reducing the number of people they need to sign this recall ballot. You think you take a try at challenging that at this point of the game? Just do something about it, and then just let it play out this way.
Right? Don't we always get concerned in litigation that if you let something get too far, the practical nature, aside from how the law should or should not apply, is going to impact the judicial process.
You want to hit it head on.
Correct.
It's easier to deal with it before it happens than to fix it after it happens.
Yeah.
And we deal with that in cases all the time. So it's a curious situation.
I mean, I've been following it, and I've been very interested from the legal standpoint why she had not intervened.
Yeah.
If I was her attorney, my advice would be you need to intervene because you don't want to let this train get so far ahead of things that a judge later on is going to say, well, if I rule this way, then I'm going to be unwinding a lot of money that the state spent putting you on the ballot and create a mess.
There's a lot of momentum that goes forth after this, and it's already kind of getting out of the gate. So, I mean, if you're going to stop it, it seems like now's the time procedurally to do, especially with a politically charged item like that that's going on.
And then the other thing to think about from a legal standpoint is it legal for the Secretary of State to do this?
Yeah, you mentioned that. I mean, what authority does, and I don't know, we haven't looked at it, but how does the Secretary of State enter into that type of agreement without at least some findings of fact or a trial or something taking place?
There have been some local election lawyers who have commented on it and had opinions, but part of the problem is there's really a dearth of election law challenges. There's not much case development on recalls in Louisiana. For example, comparing like California has a robust and thorough history of recall elections. And so there's been a lot of case law developed in how you handle these types of unique legal issues that pop up in recall campaigns. But it hasn't been tested here. It hasn't been tested here. And so it is an open question on whether or not it's even legal for the Secretary of State to come in and say, oh, I'm going to change what the active voter list was 6 months ago back when the recall petition was filed based on a settlement agreement entered into between the parties. So that's an open question here, is whether his settlement is even legally binding, which could be critical at the end of the day. We're talking about 5,000 votes.
The only thing for sure is that I would guess is we haven't seen the end of it.
Correct. So that's my hot topic for the day: legality of the settlement in the recall campaign.
Yeah, we'll see how that plays out in the court. The thing that kind of got my attention the last couple of weeks is FBI Director Christopher Wray has been testifying in Congress on the TikTok issue. If you haven't seen, there's been a big push now to maybe ban TikTok nationally throughout the whole country.
I told you I'm unaffected because I'm not on the top.
Whether you're a fan of TikTok or social media or whatnot, it doesn't matter. But this has implications as far as expanding federal powers and things of that nature. But it got me thinking, and something happened week before last over the Mardi Gras break. We were traveling from Orlando to Tampa in a van. We had the family with us. And we're all in the van talking about gun issues, handguns, concealed weapon, concealed carry permits, gun control, stuff like that. Within 10 minutes of us finishing that conversation, my phone dings with a text message. It comes in, and it was a direct mail marketing text message that was pushed to my phone for a local vendor in the area right off the interstate. Never dealt with these people before, never even been in the area before, but that message just comes across. And we always kind of joke, are they listening to us? Are our devices spying on us? I was the only person in the vehicle with an Android phone. That may have had something to do with it. But it got me thinking about, the FBI saying that TikTok screams of national security concerns. And what kind of kicked that off, by the way, with TikTok, and this came up during the Trump administration as well, there was some investigation that indicated that the parent of TikTok was using the data from TikTok to actually surveil and watch particular people in America. And that kind of set people off. It was some journalists that did a story on them, as well as some politicians. And that got the ball moving whether they should be banned, because you have this foreign entity kind of spying on Americans.
You think the Chinese government surveils people?
Of course not. But that's what started the process, and it really got me thinking, kind of looking into this stuff. As far as what they're tracking. TikTok currently has over 1 billion users. It's 138 million subscribers just in the U.S. There's a lot of people out there. But more importantly, I saw a statistic, and I didn't fact check any of this stuff, but if you had to guess, David, big social media, big data, they track our demographics, where we live, what we buy, our web searches and stuff like that. Would you believe if I told you there's an article I found that says that Facebook, as far as the traits they track per user, 52,000 individual traits. I didn't even know I had that many traits to track, but apparently Facebook does. And those are the data points they're collecting on particular users. I thought that was astounding as far as the amount of data they're collecting on us. And just one last statistic, Facebook per day is collecting data, 4 petabytes of data per day. And a petabyte, that's 1 million gigabytes of data. That's what
Wow.
we're up against as far as big data collecting and surveilling us.
Well, I can tell you, I definitely do not have 52,000 traits, but it's terrifying to think that they're storing that much
Yes.
information on us. All right, we're going to go straight into our guest today. We are lucky to have Machi Medrzycki, the owner and principal of MLM Construction, a local construction company who has been in the New Orleans community for nearly 17 years now in both the commercial and residential construction business. We're excited to have Machi here today to talk about business growth, development, leadership, and lessons learned over the years. All right, Machi. So excited to have you on the podcast this afternoon. I know you've been a close friend and client of both Brad and I for many years now, and we know you well. And so we're really excited to talk to you about your business, how you got started in the construction industry, pick your brain about different areas of your experience and from a leadership and business development perspective. But before we get into all that, I know you're a big Saints fan. So Derek Carr, your thoughts, go.
Derek Carr. Well, I'm glad we are making a change. Is it going to be a better one? We shall see. But I feel optimistic, and hopefully that's going to elevate the team and team spirit, and hopefully we can get behind it as well.
That was very politically correct. Do you, do you think he's
PC at its finest.
Do you think he's going to be better than Jameis or Dalton?
Yeah, I think the bar is set pretty low, so I think so.
All right, so just jumping into this, Machi. First, I was hoping you could tell our listeners a little bit about your construction background, just for our listeners to know. You've been in construction for a while now. Tell them a little bit about you, how you got started in construction, and how your business has developed over the years.
Sure. I started in construction personally in 2003. So it's been 20 years. It's going on 20 years. I've started in Florida. I was very fortunate. I had a really good mentor in construction, gentleman that taught me everything I know how to do with my hands, was extremely knowledgeable in actual application of construction. So I get to work on bunch of different custom builds, from entertainment centers to custom bathrooms, some roofing just to pay the bills, some exterior work, and so forth and so on. So I got exposed early on to plethora of different trades, which allowed me to learn real quick a little bit about everything. Now, I'm a master of nothing, but I know a little bit about everything. So that was a good news. Now, as good as he was a mentor for the construction knowledge, he was not so good in business. So we part ways, I think 2 years after working together, and it was a mutually beneficial split, because he was not pursuing the business part of construction as much as I wanted to. So I went on my own. That was in 2004, 2005. And what we started doing, we started subcontracting work from different general contractors, still back in Florida. Well, then Hurricane Katrina hit, which presented a large opportunity for different investors coming into the city, buying properties, and they brought myself and my crew along with them to work on the houses and rebuild in New Orleans, which allowed myself and MLM Construction to strive and have a boost of business, which allowed me to speed up the the development of the business. Obviously, we made all the mistakes, and there's nothing wrong with that. We learn from the mistakes, and still making mistakes, and thankfully not as big ones. But generally speaking, that allowed us to be in the market of New Orleans full speed, real quick, and just from there was marketing and just doing the good work and making sure clients are happy, making sure that we listen to them very clearly, listen to their needs, and just do what we say.
Yeah, that's an interesting point you brought up about mistakes. And how do you view mistakes now compared to when you started your business? Because and my question is, what I'm really getting at is, Brad and I talk sometimes whenever mistakes happen at the firm. When I was younger, I used to look at them and I'd be like, all hair on fire and upset that a mistake happened. And it's weird now. I almost am excited about it from the standpoint of how do we fix the process? How do we fix the system? What has happened in either Brad or my practice group that led to that to make us more efficient and not prevent it from happening again? Have you had that evolution at all? And can you discuss that?
Sure. I think any good leader in any business has to have that revelation at some point if they want to be successful on a grander, broader scale. And answering your question, yes. I think any young entrepreneur in any industry is going to be exposed to a certain amount of mistakes, and the sooner they can be made and the sooner you can be self-aware of those mistakes and fix them permanently, and then just absorb another wave of mistakes and just keep doing it more efficiently and quicker, the faster you're going to get wherever your journey is leading you and whatever the ultimate goal is. So I'm no different than you, bud. I mean, this is part of the journey. When I was younger, it was eating me up. I mean, sleepless nights and thinking and reminiscing why it happened and just kind of trying to control uncontrollable that already happened. So now, from the years of doing it, is you will still make mistakes. I mean, that's never going to go away because market changes. We are exposed to clients, and clients are people, and everybody is different. We are all exposed to our own set of circumstances in our personal lives, so that affects how we interact between each other in business. So yes, a lot of mistakes, a lot of standard operating procedures that got created, checklists, standard operating procedures, business plans, and how to counteract the mistakes that are reoccurring. And the new mistakes, thicker skin, right? Like we all developed thicker skin over time. So now absorbing those mistakes is much easier just because we know from the experience, okay, they're going to happen. So what is the right answer? If it's a mistake that is caused by our team, well, who's responsible? Like I am the last line of defense. So ultimately, everything is my fault. Nothing is anybody else's fault because ultimately I have the right to say yes or no to something.
Sure.
But I'm a firm believer in letting people make their own mistakes because I feel like they learn from them permanently. Now, obviously, we're not going to try to let them make mistakes that they are critical to the business, but something that is easily fixable. I feel like the team learns and develops and mesh together much better and ultimately makes the whole entire culture of the company healthier. And we all get together in a like a family setting rather than, oh, he's the boss, he blames me for stuff. He's always nothing is his fault. Like we don't do that. And that's like the best advice I can give to anybody in business. Just always feel like everything is your fault and it's just going to be okay.
And that kind of ties back into what you initially said about having a mentor. A good mentor is somebody who's made all those mistakes and kind of pass that knowledge on to you or whoever they're mentoring so you can prevent making all the mistakes that they made. Have you had that opportunity to maybe mentor other people now that you've reached this point in your business?
Great question. I am a type of person that I don't like to preach. So human nature is funny, right? Like we as humans don't want to make any mistakes. Mm-hmm. Yet we're not going to listen to others when they preach to us, right? Like I remember when I was younger, my dad would tell me, "Oh, don't do this, don't do that." I'm like, yeah. And obviously he was right, I was wrong, but I would never admit it. So I like to find. I don't necessarily pursue mentoring other people. I like to do it with the subcontractors that I feel they are open to receiving the mentorship. And we have subcontractors that we work with for many, many years now, right now going on decades, that absorbed some of our standard operating procedures to a certain degree, and they modified it for their liking and their needs. But they definitely benefited our company, number one, because now we are just so much tighter together working on projects. But also, I believe they got elevated in their own personal development and business development.
And I want to hit on something you said, Machi, about the journey. But first, I don't want to go further into Can you tell our listeners a little bit about MLM Construction? Tell them about the company. Who is your ideal customer? Just tell us a little bit about your company.
Our customer base is very diverse. Like we don't have a specific, from the perspective of profession. We have attorneys, physicians, business owners that we work with. We work with Fortune 500 and even Fortune 50 companies on a commercial level. Mostly residential side of our company is we do historic renovation. City of New Orleans obviously has a lot of those. So we would get the property, rebuild it to your liking, camelbacks, that type of buildings. We do new constructions as well on a higher level as far as financially is concerned. So more of the custom built structures. And then we have a separate division that handles solely bathrooms and kitchens, and we do design and construction. So essentially, if a client comes in and has zero idea what they want to do, well, they have some sort of concept, but like as far as the drawings and budgets, we can lead them step by step, by the hand, and develop the drawing, develop the scope of work, go from pre-construction, hand it off to a construction services, and then to a post-construction services. So it's a one-stop shop for residential contractors. On commercial level, it's a little bit more straightforward because usually we work with the architects. They submit us a set of drawings. We do a hard bids with our vendors and trade partners, and then we present the schedule of values and we construct the project. But generally speaking, business plan is the same for both arms of the company.
Gotcha. Earlier, Machi, you were talking about the journey, and I know that you kind of think about these things because we've been friends and kind of high level talked about these things besides you just being a client. How do you balance the journey in business and in business growth and development with that constant urge to always be thinking about where you're trying to get? In other words, appreciating where you are now compared to where you used to be. How do you personally deal with that?
Well, that's a great question. That's actually a very good question because any business friend that I have, and majority of my friends I did meet through the business or business venture, like you and I, we met through business one way or the other. It doesn't matter which way you're going to look at it.
Right.
So I get a lot of feedback, and a lot of business owners have a tendency of overthinking and rehearsing for good or bad, and they always feel like they just not where they should be in their own mind at that point in their journey. So I was no different. It took me a long time to come to the senses of certain things cannot be rushed and they have to take their own place and they have to develop on their own. So meditation is number one thing for me. I found a peace in my mind by meditating. And a lot of times it's a gratitude meditation to where you just look where you've been a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, and see where you are right now in your journey. And then you say, okay, well, if I'm going to say in the last 2 years, we took all those steps and we are where we are right now, the next 2 years, they cannot be any worse than that. They cannot be at the minimum the same, but we have a potential to make them better. So it's a very valuable tool, at least for me, that allows me to find that daily drive. Motivation is a bad word to use, in my opinion, because it wears off. It's a baby steps, one day at a time. Like, don't overthink stuff. Like, just do one more thing a day. Just that one thing, that one more email, that one more estimate, that one more phone call. I mean, it's not that complicated. You just got to be able to compartmentalize it in your head in order to find a peace with yourself.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think Brad would probably agree. We talk about this all the time, is it's like the consistency of pushing forward every single day, right? Just moving the ball forward a little bit every single day. And before you know it, the ball's become a lot bigger. It started small, but you've done a lot of things every single day consistently over time. It's almost like the flywheel effect.
Yeah,
right?
look, it's the little small things. The easy things the things that are easy not to do every day that you can overlook is doing those little things all the time, doing it consistently, which adds up. And you mentioned meditation. I'm a big fan of meditation. What's your personal meditation strategy? Do you use like apps or something, or how do you implement it in your life?
So that's a journey within itself.
There's many
uh,
types.
yeah, the I used to do a guided meditation, which, well, I'm gonna even take one step back. Quite frankly, in the beginning, I thought it was stupid. I'm sitting right there. It's like, what am I supposed to think of, right? Like 3 seconds into it, I was like, I got more important things to do. Like, this is waste of my time. And I said, I'm gonna give it a shot. So, and again, it's a consistency. So I was doing it very sporadically, a couple of times a week. But what I found very quickly, like within a couple of weeks, maybe a month, I found that I can calm my brain down by just focusing on my breathing. And it wasn't necessarily that no thoughts were coming into my mind. I don't think we have an ability to completely disconnect. It's just focusing on the breath or where the breath is going. That and guided meditation is great for that because you got a voice that leads you through it. So, you start with 3 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and you kind of progress through it. At this point in my journey, personally, the meditation journey, I don't necessarily do a guided meditation anymore. I can literally, doesn't matter what's happening in my life. I can just stop what I'm doing and take 10 minutes to myself and completely disconnect and focus on myself, focus on breathing, on just being peaceful and mindful. I cannot overstate the importance of it for anybody, whether it's a business journey, personal development, or just day-to-day operation.
It's a great tool for just regaining your focus. And I've seen it referred to as taming that monkey mind. So your mind's just not all over the place and trying to think of 101 things at a time. It's a good way to focus in on things. So it's been a valuable thing in my life as well.
Yeah. So my analogy to that is like if you ever seen the lottery and you see all those balls bouncing around before they get sucked into the tube, that's usually how human brain I would make it look if I would have an option of making it look, right. Like we are bombarded with hundreds of thoughts a second, and be able to calm it down and extract the important parts of your thought process is something that meditation will allow anybody to do over time. But it's like anything else in life. Like you got to practice it. You gotta enjoy the journey and don't look for the ultimate destination.
All right, 2 rapid fire questions before we wrap up our conversation this afternoon, Machi. First, one business development or personal development book, if you had to recommend it, go. What would it be?
Business development, Flywheel is a good one. The how to make friends and influence others, that's another good one. What's the other books that I can recommend? What am I on right now? Let me just look at my cheat sheet real quick, and I'm going to tell you exactly what I'm going to recommend because I'm a big fan of those. So right now I am on the book Stillness is the Key. That is by Ryan Holiday. That's a Stoic philosophy. Great book. It's really helpful with meditation, but I think that's something that is a next step for a lot of beginners. What's the other one?
He also wrote Ego is the Enemy as well, I think.
Yes, that's one of his books. What else we got right here? I mean, there's a bunch of different ones, but that's probably the one that I would recommend right now.
Okay, and last question. Give us your superpower. What is the one thing, if you had to say, that you do that you think the quality, the trait that you have is your superpower in your business?
I can keep calm under any circumstance. I can take my time, remove myself from the situation, and think about it before I answer.
And not always a common thing in the construction industry, is it?
I would venture to say that's actually quite opposite.
Yeah, right. Well, look, Machi, thank you so much for being a guest. We loved this discussion with you this afternoon. Machi Medrzycki, MLM Construction. We really appreciate you being a guest on Overruled, and we're looking forward to talk to you soon. Take care, my friend.
Take care.
Thank you, guys. Pleasure talking to you.
All right, I want to thank Machi for joining us today on the Overruled podcast, Brad. I thought between the topics on the recall, legal issues, along with your facts about TikTok that are going to terrify me and keep me up tonight. We had a great discussion with Machi on business development and growth. It was a great show.
Once again, we enjoy doing this, and hopefully it's some useful information for everybody out there.
All right. Have a good one.
Take care.
Information is for illustrative purposes only and does not constitute tax, investment, or legal advice. Always consult with a qualified investment, legal, or tax professional before taking any action.